History remembers the dog as man's best friend. But 400 years ago, that exact same bond was a death warrant. We often think of the past as a time of lawless chaos. It wasn't. The terror of the 16th century was organized. It was documented, meticulously formal. This is the story of an era when affection itself was treated as a crime.
A lonely dog, sitting outside a heavy oak city gate, day after day, waiting for a master who will never return. To the modern mind, this is a heartbreaking display of loyalty, a testament to a pure heart. But to a 16th century court, this devotion was sinister. It was undeniable proof of a dark, supernatural contract.
In the 1500s, the law didn't see a pet, it saw an animal familiar. To understand why a dog would actually be banished for its loyalty, we have to entirely dismantle the 16th century mind. According to the Daemonology written by King James VI, these beings weren't simply animals, they were spirits wearing animal bodies like masks. The divide between our reality and theirs is absolute. In the eyes of the Inquisition, your dog's wagging tail wasn't a gesture of love, it was a rhythmic signal to the devil. This was the era of the great band affection, a time where the more your animal loved you, the more likely you were to burn at the stake.
The logic of the courts was fiercely transactional. A witch didn't adopt a dog. She entered a pact, a supernatural contract with binding terms. The spirit provided magical assistance, strictly defined in the legal texts as maleficium. And in exchange for this maleficium, the familiar demanded a specific, gruesome form of nourishment: human blood. Whenever a familiar performed a service for its master, it required payment. It would suck a drop of blood directly from the master's body. This physical transaction left physical evidence, a permanent, insensible bruise. If you were found with a strange numb spot on your skin and a dog that never left your side, the case against you was already closed. The evidence was literally carved into your flesh. The court operated on a strict theological premise. Humans were made in the image of God, standing high above the beasts. Therefore, any animal that mimics human affection or loyalty was actively turning the divinely ordained hierarchy upside down. A dog that looked at you with human understanding wasn't a miracle of nature. It was considered a deliberate, demonic transgression against the very order of the universe. This paranoia wasn't just theory. It played out in a specific, haunting trial that captures the exact moment a best friend became a co-conspirator. During a witchcraft investigation, a master was thrown into a deep stone dungeon. He was accused of using maleficum to rot the village's crops. As the accusations flew, his human friends vanished into the shadows, but his dog refused to leave the prison door. Day and night, the animal stayed. It wouldn't eat, it wouldn't move. In any other century, this vigil would be the ultimate proof of an innocent heart. But the prosecutor looked at that starving dog and saw an accomplice. The logic was utterly cold. If the master was a servant of Satan, then the dog was his handler. In the sprawling records of the Lancaster trials, spirits often took the form of dogs specifically to entice their victims into a pact. The dog's refusal to abandon the dungeon wasn't grief. It was a demon waiting for its next instruction. The animal was arrested, brought before a magistrate, and formally charged. The official indictments? A partner in bestiality, and a coworker in magic. If you lived in a society where owning a dog could lead to your execution, would you have the courage to keep one? Or would you leave it at the city gate to save yourself? Consider the weight of that choice, the absolute isolation demanded by the law. In this specific trial, the dog wasn't executed. The judge, perhaps feeling a rare spark of hesitation, didn't want to waste the village's resources on a hanging. Instead, he delivered a sentence arguably worse for a pack animal: exile. The dog was taken to the border of the territory and branded with hot iron. If it ever returned, both it and its master would be put to the stake. The court didn't merely break the master's body. They legally banned the only affection he had left in the world. Why go through the exhaustive theater of a trial? Why not simply dispose of the animal? Because the trial was never truly about the dog. The animal became a scapegoat. Historians identify these spectacles as a communal mechanism for restoring faith in the divine order. If a village suffered from plague or famine, they required someone to blame. A human criminal might escape, but a dog is easy to catch. By trying the dog with meticulous due process, the state and the church were extending their power. They were demonstrating to a terrified populace that absolutely nothing, not the wind, not the crops, and certainly not the beasts, existed beyond the reach of their law.
The sheer absurdity deepens when we look at the mechanics of these courts. These animals were actually granted defense lawyers. The famous jurist Bartholomew Chassenade once defended a group of rats accused of destroying a barley crop. His winning defense? He successfully argued his clients couldn't safely attend their court date because the roads were simply too full of cats. The judge agreed, and the trial was delayed.
This grotesque legalism reveals a deeply unsettling truth about the era. The authorities didn't view these creatures as dumb beasts acting on instinct. They believed animals possessed moral agency. They were considered rational actors who had consciously chosen the side of darkness. And because they had made a choice, justice dictated that they had to suffer the consequences. We call them heroes now. Today, service animals represent the absolute pinnacle of the human-canine bond. They guide the blind, they detect seizures, we see a dog in a harness, and we see a lifesaver. But 400 years ago, that exact same harness would have been categorized as a supernatural harness. A dog's profound ability to sense human emotion and act upon it, the very quality we prize today, was the exact evidence that guaranteed its exile in the 1500s.
The journey from the execution of familiars to the modern service animal was agonizingly slow. The shadow of the Inquisition lingered in the architecture of the law, taking centuries for paranoia to finally yield to reason.
Even as late as 1919, the legacy of the animal trial remained. The dog Bobs was sentenced to death in a court of law simply for being perceived as dangerous by a policeman. It took a massive public campaign and the intervention of a high-level barrister to save him from execution. But a profound shift had occurred. The crowd standing outside that courtroom in 1919 didn't look at Bobs and see a familiar. They saw an innocent.
Humanity slowly evolved from viewing the bond as a transactional pact to recognizing it as a relationship of rights. We look back now, comfortable in our modern enlightenment, and we laugh at what we call the childish disposition of the Middle Ages. We assume we've outgrown the darkness that burned loyalty at the stake.
But the fear of the animal within still haunts the foundations of our legal systems. We no longer force dogs into human clothes and hang them in the town square. Yet the era of the banned affection remains, standing as a permanent warning. It reminds us, with absolute clarity, that the most dangerous thing in the world isn't a demon in the shape of a dog. It's a human being with a law book and a heart full of fear. Which begs the question, what harmless affections are we unknowingly exiling today?